u as initial velocity is not always 0. It simply means origin of the velocity. While v as the final velocity simply means where the velocity ends. And still, it does not mean where the velocity stop or become 0. Let's take a look at this car passing through 4 points. Point A, point B, point C, point D. Let's take a look at the motion of this car. The car starts at A and ends the journey at D. Let's assume velocity for each of the points. At A, it's obviously starting from 0, so A is 0 meter per second. At B, let's assume it to be 25 meter per second. At C, let it be 40 meter per second. Then at D, where it decelerates back to 0 meter per second. Then we need two observers, one that would monitor initial velocity and the other observer will monitor final velocity. If our first observer is at A and our second observer is at B, then the initial velocity will be 0 meter per second and the final velocity will be 25 meter per second. However, if our first observer is at B and our second observer is at C, our initial velocity will be 25 meter per second and final velocity will be 40 meter per second. As you can see, the most important thing is the references of our initial and final, not the value. So if you are looking for our net velocity, then it will be the final velocity, the last velocity, minus the initial velocity. For the first one, it will be 25 minus 0, which is 0. For the second one, it will be 40 minus 0, 40 minus 25, which is 15. Now, if our first observer is at A and our second observer is at D, then the final minus initial is 0 because at both ends, both final and initial are 0. If our first observer is at C and our second observer is at D, as you know, nothing has changed. It will be final minus the initial. The final is 0 and the initial is 40, which will give us minus 40. And as you can see from that race, from that motion, the car decelerated, which simply means the velocity reduced from 40 down to 0. That is why it is minus 40.